This year's British Grand Prix was fantastic for a number of reasons. The borderline weather conditions at the start of the race took the teams out of their comfort zone of race simulations and performance predictions and forced them to take a gamble, one which didn't pay off for a number of frontrunners. It saw Lando Norris get a race win at his home Grand Prix for the first time, an achievement that will be rightly celebrated. But more than anything, the reason this race was fantastic was Nico Hulkenberg getting his first ever podium finish. The German driver had the record for the most race starts without one, starting his 239th race at the weekend without a podium, a full 111 races more than Adrian Sutil, who was the driver with the second most starts without a podium. Breaking the curse and getting a first podium at 37 years old, and in a Sauber no less, is an utterly incredible achievement. And today, I'll break down exactly how it happened, so don't go anywhere. Nico Hulkenberg started his day at Silverstone as far back as a driver can get in Formula 1, the last row of the grid. Fast forward 52 laps of chaotic wet weather racing, and the 37-year-old came through the field, aided by a perfectly executed Sauber strategy, to achieve his first F1 podium on his 239th attempt. Hulkenberg's sensational third place at the British Grand Prix on Sunday, which set a new record for the longest time before finishing on the podium at 5,593 days, had been 15 years in the making. The German's debut was at the 2010 Bahrain Grand Prix with Williams, and after 10 seasons in F1, he found himself without a seat in 2020. He made a return with Haas 3 years later, and his move to Sauber seemed like a risk after that, but with Audi keen to secure the services of an experienced German driver to help them in their first year in the sport, he seemed like the perfect choice. It's important at this point to remember that while Hulkenberg may have become a midfield journeyman during his career, he was once heralded as so much more. Hulkenberg used to be managed by Willy Webber, the longtime manager of Michael Schumacher. Webber regularly praised Hulkenberg as an unbelievable talent and said he reminded him of Schumacher as a young driver. Those comparisons were backed up by an impressive junior career as well. He was a regular championship winner, winning the equivalent of the F3 title at the time at the second attempt and winning the F2 equivalent at the time at first go. In the Asian F2 series, he came in mid-season, took pole position at his very first race. At the second round he went to, in Qatar, he took pole again before winning the race by 13 seconds, beating second-placed Sergio Perez. When Hulkenberg made his F1 debut in 2010, the idea of not standing on the podium for 15 years seemed unimaginable. He was signed by Williams and quickly impressed, scoring a shock pole position in Brazil in the wet in his first F1 season. 2 years later at Interlagos, in similar damp conditions, he took the fight to Hamilton's McLaren for victory in a plucky Force India, only for a collision to take them both out of contention when Hulkenberg tried to grab the lead. At points early in his F1 career, Hulkenberg was in the running for seats at both Ferrari and Mercedes, the latter's second choice if Hamilton hadn't signed there for 2013, but neither materialized. Imagine if Hamilton hadn't taken a leap of faith in Mercedes and Hulkenberg had ended up with that incredibly dominant car. How different F1 history would have been. With his early promise not transforming into a place at a top team, Hulkenberg was resigned to fight in the midfield for the rest of his career. While he never graced the podium in Formula 1 during this time, there was a podium finish during this period. Hulkenberg won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2015 as part of a one-off crew racing for Porsche. Make no mistake, winning the 24 Hours of Le Mans is an unbelievable achievement, one that far fewer drivers have achieved than finishing on the F1 podium. But after trying for so long, the joy of that first F1 podium must have been a career highlight for Hulkenberg. Despite being as good a driver as he is though, driving for Sauber, Hulkenberg was always going to need some help to secure a first podium finish this season. In their 33-year history, Sauber have been a team for hire, selling their services to whichever company fancied getting their name into Formula 1. Alfa Romeo, BMW, Petronas, and Red Bull at one point have all helped fund the passion project of Peter Sauber. Don't let that second-place finish in the Constructors' Championship in 2007 fool you. Sauber have never been championship contenders. They've always been midfield at best. Even in that 2007 season, They only got 2 podiums, which has to be up there for the fewest podium finishes for a second-place finishing constructor in a season. So how did Hulk secure them their first podium since 2012? The ever-reliable wet weather at the British Grand Prix was always going to help. Making the right tyre choice at the right time was a challenge. That and staying on track when it was raining. 5 drivers opted to pit before the lights went out to change to slicks, believing the track would dry out. A brave call they would all ultimately rue. With Russell, Leclerc, Antonelli, Hadjar and Behrman taking the risk, Hulkenberg had made 5 places before the race even began. As they all struggled for pace on a track that wouldn't dry out, Hulkenberg negotiated the tricky early conditions to rise all the way to 10th by lap 3 of 52. With the first laps out of the way, Nico then had to rely on some perfect strategy calls from his team to continue his charge. The first critical call Sauber made was bringing him in at the end of lap 9 for a fresh set of intermediate tyres. More rain was coming, but running the Inters, which are specifically designed to deal with damp conditions on a drying track, had caused his first set to wear. Fresh rubber gave him an undercut when the rest of the leaders pitted 2 laps later to make the same switch, promoting him to 5th. Then the rain really came down, forcing a brief safety car, which grouped up the pack and closed the gap to the leaders. As the safety car was called on lap 14, Nico was a second and a half behind Lance Stroll, who was a further 7 seconds back from the podium positions. With the 2 McLarens and Verstappen occupying 1st through 3rd, his odds of getting on the podium were as good as nothing before that safety car was called. However, a rare error from Max Verstappen saw the Dutchman spinning out before the second safety car restart. This left Hulkenberg to fight Aston Martin's Lance Stroll through the next stint over his coveted 3rd place, while the 2 McLaren cars escaped ahead. A big result was on the cards for one of the midfield underdogs. It was a question of which. It was clear that Hulkenberg had the superior pace. He closed up to Stroll a number of times, but without DRS due to the wet conditions, he couldn't complete the pass and had to fall back to call his intermediate tyres as the damp parts of the track started to dry. Finally, on lap 34, when the rain abated and DRS could be reactivated, he passed Stroll into Stowe. Hamilton made the same move 1 lap later, which put Hulkenberg's podium in serious doubt. Except Hulkenberg was able to keep the faster Ferrari at bay, putting all his experience to good use on the drying track with 1 more pit stop to make. Again, Sauber nailed its timing. It took the risk of conceding track position by leaving Hulkenberg out until lap 42, 1 lap after Hamilton had pulled the trigger first. The undercut would gain critical seconds when the slicks fired up to temperature, but Hamilton's off-track excursion when leaving the pits instead caused the gap to swell to 10 seconds. Hamilton did start to close the gap at an impressive pace, but Ferrari's choice of soft tyres proved to be the wrong one. While Hamilton did get the gap all the way down to 5 seconds, his soft tyres couldn't hold together long enough. With the medium tyres, Nico didn't have the same pace early on in the stint, but he had the longevity to stay ahead of the 7-time world champion. It left Hulkenberg relieved when he finally crossed the line. Jonathan Wheatley, Sauber's team principal, who left Red Bull last year, jumped on the radio to say it was the most overdue podium in Formula One history. Wheatley, the longtime sporting director at Red Bull and a former mechanic to Michael Schumacher, later added, "One of the best drives I've seen at Silverstone. One of the best drives I've seen of any driver ever. And it seems incredible to me that we are all finally celebrating a podium. It feels to me like he should have been getting them all his career. It seems to be the longest waited podium ever. He showed his class today. He didn't put a wheel wrong, and the team made all the right decisions in terms of strategy." Around the paddock, congratulations greeted Hulkenberg, who's an incredibly popular figure within the sport. The podium celebrations of the McLaren drivers were muted, with Piastri looking furious for his 10-second penalty. But while Nico wasn't showered with champagne by his fellow competitors, his team made sure he received the celebration he deserved. The Mercedes team gifted Sauber several bottles of champagne to aid in the celebrations, which were quickly used to soak the German driver. Aston Martin also sent the team a case to help with their post-race party. His climb from 19th to 3rd on what was a truly miserable summer's day in the UK, plus the points he'd scored in the previous 3 races, means Hulkenberg moves up to 9th in the Drivers' Championship. Over the past 4 races, he's outscored Max Verstappen 31 points to 29, and Sauber have outscored Red Bull 35 to 29. It's an incredible reflection of the work being done at the Sauber team, and an incredibly promising sign for how the team will perform next season under the Audi name. Reflecting on his first ever podium, Nico said, "That race was intense. With all the changes and conditions, it was sketchy," he added. A high-speed track with changeable conditions is never easy. While I'm happy and relieved, I'm mostly tired and looking forward to getting home, to be honest. He'd committed to the Audi project knowing it might be some time until the results came, in what is likely to be the final stint of his long F1 career. Surely, even in his wildest dreams, he couldn't have thought that a third podium would be coming this season. What did you think of the race? How happy were you for the Hulk when he crossed the line? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to press that like button and subscribe to F1 Reverse. Thanks a lot, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.